Historically, we use the phrase problem solving to describe courts that look to the underlying issues that bring people into the court system and employ innovative approaches to address those issues. The unified court system has a long tradition of piloting and sustaining innovative problem-solving courts. From the launch of the first community courts and drug courts over 20 years ago, to the mental health courts, veterans courts, and numerous other models that have come since, New York has set a national standard for creativity and effectiveness. Today, we have more than 300 problem-solving courts across the state. Over the past 20 years, we've built a strong foundation of problem-solving practice, and we've learned many lessons. In particular, we've developed a more nuanced understanding of mental health, substance abuse, trauma, and the other challenges that are often the root causes of court involvement. I'm committed to ensuring that the court system builds on that foundation and applies those lessons, supporting further innovation and expanding access to therapeutic justice. In doing so, we can simultaneously continue to decrease our reliance on incarceration, save taxpayer dollars, and enhance public safety. As you're listening to the people who have graciously agreed to travel here to speak to you, I ask you to consider the question I posed earlier. What could we gain from thinking about all of our courts as problem-solving courts, rather than determining what law was broken, who broke it, and what the punishment should be? It is my pleasure to introduce Kimberly Van Camp, the Treatment Courts Project Director for the 7th Judicial District, which encompasses Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben, Wayne, and Yates counties.
I am so honored to introduce to you today Ms. Keisha Nankusing.
I am a person in recovery, a single mother of 3 beautiful children. One is with me today. And I'm also a certified recovery peer advocate. For over a decade, I had been dependent on drugs and alcohol. So was my partner and the father of my children. And there were times during active use that we wanted to change, we wanted to get sober, but we just, we didn't stay committed. In the end of a long time, in the end, we had no money, no job, no transportations, no home, and we'd pushed our friends and our families away. At my arraignment, the public defender told me that I might qualify for a treatment court, and at that time I was facing 7 years, up to 7 years in prison. I was relieved because I knew that I needed help, and I know that the treatment courts could provide me with the tools that I would need to sustain my sobriety. I started going to a 12-step program. I mended my relationships with my family and my friends. I received a scholarship to become a certified recovery peer advocate, and I started volunteering as a peer at local recovery programs. My life has completely turned around. I have my children and my family back. I have a huge support system. And over the last 10 years, I've found a passion for service and helping others on their journey to health, wellness, and recovery. Connection is key. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. Thank you for everything that you guys do. It's really an honor to be here, so thank you.
It is, of course, extremely gratifying that our treatment court addressed Ms. Nankusing's problems without a punitive response, and that as a result, she has a new life with 3 wonderful children. It's also especially important to note that the dividends paid for the court's thoughtful response include Ms. Nankusing's own commitment to help others find their way to recovery, sometimes even without any court involvement. Those who served in our country's armed forces often pay a heavy price. Sometimes that price is obvious, sometimes less so. Either way, we owe them a great debt. I turn next to another problem-solving court, the Ontario County Veterans Court. I'm proud to introduce my colleague, Judge Jacqueline Sisson, who presides over that court.
I have the privilege of presiding over our county's treatment courts, including Veterans Court. I would first like to thank Chief Judge Wilson for this incredible opportunity to spotlight the crucial work that our treatment courts do throughout our state every single day. Criminal behavior, mental health problems, and substance abuse often stem directly from service and may be amplified by re-entry into civilian life. Veterans Treatment Courts were created to offer a solution by connecting justice-involved veterans to appropriate services in a court setting surrounded by an interdisciplinary team, all of whom work collaboratively to help veterans. When I first heard that the Chief Judge was looking for suggested speakers, our treatment team unanimously and without hesitation thought of Corporal Chris McFiggins, a 2021 graduate of Veterans Court.
I am a United States Marine. I've deployed twice to Iraq and served honorably for 6.5 years. On leaving the service, as an unfortunate consequence of combat injury, I became an opiate addict. That, coupled with my uncontrollable drinking, landed me in the Ontario County Jail from Thanksgiving through Christmas of 2020. I'd prayed I'd never have to go through this experience again, and salvation came to me in a visit from the Ontario County Court representative. Instead of treating me as someone who had committed crimes, Judge Sisson, Betsy Lee, the court coordinator, treated me as someone with a treatable addiction. Together with Katie, my VA counselor, they helped me through my first year of sobriety. Until my time in Veterans Court, I'd become very hesitant to trust anyone except my Marine Corps brothers. But I'd become resolved to leave shame and guilt behind. As the months passed and after starting and participating in a 12-step program, my confidence began to grow. By trusting the people I'd met in Veterans Court, along with many others, my VA counselor, my probation officer, and those I'd met in my 12-step program, my life was transformed. They'd never failed me, and like Marines, they never left me behind. I began to feel useful again, as I did with my buddies on deployment. I began to feel that I had something to offer. I had graduated from Veterans Court without sanctions and started volunteering as a veteran mentor to the men and women going through the same treatment court from which I had just graduated. After 9 months, I was offered a paid position with the Finger Lakes Area Counseling and Recovery Agency. In addition to serving as a mentor, I've also been asked to participate on the New York State Veterans Court Advisory Board, and next week I will be going to Saratoga Springs for the New York Association of Treatment Court Professionals for their annual conference. Having the chance to help others helps me maintain my own sobriety.
I hope you can begin to see the parallels in the experiences you're hearing today. Like Ms. Nankusing, Corporal McFiggins was charged with a crime, but treated as a human being with an addiction, not a criminal. Our courts supported him in what must have been an immeasurably difficult journey to become whole. And like Ms. Nankusing, he has not only recovered to build a healthy life, but he's committed himself to helping others overcome those same challenges. Thank you, Judge Sisson and Corporal McFiggins. Through our experiences with drug treatment courts and mental health courts, we've started to think more broadly about alternatives to incarceration courts that would not be constrained to people with diagnosed addictions or illnesses. We can adapt the principles that undergird our successes in those areas to persons in trouble for whom a non-carceral alternative might provide a superior solution. One such court is the Manhattan Felony Alternative to Incarceration Court, or sometimes called the ATI Court, in New York County Supreme Court. Developed in collaboration with court stakeholders, the court provides individualized programming and rigorous supervision to felony participants who do not fit neatly into other problem-solving courts. By focusing on the whole person and addressing mental health, substance use, employment, housing, social supports, and more, here to introduce that court and another story with a happy ending is Mr. Joseph Barrett, the project director of Manhattan Justice Opportunities, a program of the Center for Justice Innovation.
Launched in 2019, it is the first all-purpose felony ATI court in the country, creating alternatives to incarceration for all types of felony cases, including violent offenses. The court has helped people make countless positive changes in their lives, from securing jobs and housing to progressing in treatment to rebuilding relationships. Judge Ellen Bybin, with the support of the unified court system, spearheaded this effort and provides direct oversight from the bench, bringing compassion and rigor to each case. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office reviews every felony case to identify and assess whether the person charged can be safely supported in the community. Under DA Alvin Bragg, it has provided over $2 million in funding to scale this initiative so that as many appropriate cases as possible can be diverted. To share her story of resilience and determination, it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce Ms. Renette Cordet.
I am here today to tell you about my experience going through ATI court. My mom didn't have custody over my 3 older siblings. They lived with my aunt. Living alone with my mom was very hard. We didn't get along and she didn't watch over me. I was lonely and started to get into trouble. I went from shelter to shelter. I was arrested many times, which resulted in some misdemeanor convictions. That's when I ended up in court on a felony robbery charge. When I learned about ATI court, I wanted to have my case transferred there. Each time I was in court, I started to feel seen. Judge Bybin cared about me and always asked, "Do you have anything to say?" And that let me speak from my heart and be remorseful for what I have done. As part of my mandate, I took services at Fortune Society. I started with an anger management class, but I wanted to do more. So I started GED classes in therapy. ATI Court and Fortune gave me a second chance to show who I really was without anger and to be productive in society. I remember feeling different than the woman who started 3 years before. I felt that the people at court knew I was more than my trauma. Today, I have my own apartment, I have a stable job, I have my new computer, and I use it to take classes. I love to cook. I still go to Fortune, and I am taking a computer class, so one day I can work in an office. Here's the best news. I'm going to be a mom in the spring. My baby boy is due in the spring. I am on a path for a better life for both of us. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who made ATI Court possible. Thank you.
Ms. Cordet, there is nobody in this courtroom who will refuse to help make sure that baby has the life that you dream of for him. Problem-solving courts like the ones you heard about today need resources to meet the growing demand for their important work. And to be effective, we will also need partners, including treatment and supportive housing providers who offer truly viable alternatives to incarceration. Most of our criminal courts do not have a felony ATI part. Some of our judges, undeterred, have taken it upon themselves to develop their own unorthodox approaches that promote happy endings. One such innovative and truly amazing judge works less than a block away from here in Albany County Court. She created a program called You Can, spelled with a U instead of Y-O-U at the beginning, in case you're looking for it. Here you get 2 miraculous stories with happy endings, and I could not be prouder of my colleague, Judge Andra Ackerman, who is here to tell you about You Can and introduce you to the first graduate of the Albany County Court Felony You Can program.
In 2016, during my first week as a city court judge in Cohoes, I noticed a pattern. Young adults who had many factors in common. They were committing an escalating series of misdemeanors and inching closer to committing felony crimes. Here's some of the things they had in common. Most had dropped out of high school or were on the verge of being quitting or being expelled. Most lived in poverty. Most had only had one parent who was completely out of the picture, and if the other one was present, was often emotionally unavailable due to substance abuse or mental illness. Most came to court alone, and although they tried to appear tough, you could see inside they were hurting, and they were so close to feeling completely helpless. I related to these struggling youth. I never met my father, and my mother was an abusive alcoholic. My childhood was marked with poverty until I was about 9 years old when I was removed from my mother's care with my sister. I went on to live with 3 different foster families until I moved into an apartment with my sister months shy of my 18th birthday. As a new judge, I would sit on the bench and I would see those young adults standing before me, and I would see my sister and I would see myself. And over I'd ask myself, how did I get on this side and they're standing before me? I could have easily been on the other side of that bench. I realized that at critical junctures in my life, when I really easily could have went off the rails, there was someone there, a mentor. I wanted to replicate for the young defendants in my court what I experienced to get me through and where I am today. I had an idea that I shared with a close colleague and friend, John Carr, who is here today, and our work together resulted in the creation of a court-based mentoring program called UCAN. It stands for United Against Crime Community Action Network, and this is how it works. Young defendants who we as a team are convinced that they truly want to change their lives, but they do not know how to do so, plead guilty to a crime and go on a year of interim probation. Sentencing is deterred for a year of tough love with a lot of support and a lot of structure. And when I say team, everyone has to agree, the judge, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the probation department, before a defendant is accepted into the program. During that year, they are held to the typical conditions of probation, plus they have to meet with a volunteer mentor once a week, about an hour at minimum. They must hold a job. They must have a good faith basis going forward, getting their GED if they have not graduated from high school, and they meet with me once a month for an update with all parties present, probation and both attorneys. If they dot their I's and cross their T's at the end of the year, the misdemeanor charge is dismissed and they leave court with a clean slate. But more importantly, they leave court with a newly discovered self-confidence, a strong work ethic, a high school diploma or GED, and hope for the future. I deal with felonies, and most of the young defendants in my court have criminal possession of a weapon, gun possession crimes, and the risks are high. And then a case came before me of a young man charged with criminal possession of a weapon. He had no prior convictions, no prior arrests, and no known gang connections. We got him into UCAN. Over the course of this year, this young man's performance was perfect. So perfect that the DA's office, who initially wanted them to keep a felony and initially had offered 2 years of state prison, allowed him to withdraw that felony plea and accept a misdemeanor. It is my honor, privilege, and pleasure to introduce to you the very first graduate of Albany County Court Felony UCAN program, the recently promoted Lance Corporal Anthony Garcia of the United States Marine Corps.
I grew up in a single-parent household. Food, clothing, and shelter was multiple choice on multiple occasions. My father was never in my life, and my mom, she played both roles. Money was tight, and food was never a guarantee. I dropped out of high school so I could get a job and help pay the bills. While working different jobs to make ends meet, I made a lot of friends, quote unquote, but they weren't really my friends at all. They were more into the gang life and selling drugs. But coming from where I come from, that's pretty much the environment. I was never in a gang, but because I was always around the people who were, I was afraid for my safety and what would happen to my mom if anything happened to me. So I went ahead and took the initiative and got a firearm to protect myself. One Monday morning in 2019, on my way to work, I got pulled over by a state trooper who proceeded to search my vehicle and found the firearm in the trunk. Right before I was supposed to be sentenced, my lawyer learned about a UCAN program that if I successfully completed the program, I could stay out of jail, plead to a lesser charge, which would be a misdemeanor instead of a felony. And I knew that this was my second chance at life, so I grabbed it with both hands. During my year in the UCAN program, I maintained a job. I kept on a straight path with my probation officer, including always having a clean drug test. I met frequently with my mentor, Miguel. Every second Friday of the month, I went to the UCAN meeting at the court with the Honorable Judge Ackerman. And at those meetings, Judge Ackerman would gather all the UCAN participants, call us up one by one to share progress reports that she was hearing from our probation officers, mentors, and others in our lives. My mentor, Miguel, became like family to me, one of my brothers. And we would meet more than we were supposed to. He was my personal trainer. And we would usually meet in the gym, and he pushed me and he supported me, both physically and mentally. My last day in the U-Camp program was very special. Everyone was there, my mother, my brother, my mentor, my girlfriend, who is now my wife. And it was an emotional moment because Judge Ackerman and everyone there truly loved me and saw something in me that I couldn't even see in myself. I am now a Lance Corporal in the United States Marine Corps, and this is only a chapter in my life for where, once I do get out of the United States Marine Corps, I'm looking forward to proceeding into law enforcement. I want to be able to be a police officer who is embedded in his own community, protecting and serving, who steps out of the squad car to play basketball with the little kids, who works to understand and earn trust within his community. I'm not mad at the trooper who arrested me 5 years ago. He was only doing his job, and I was on the other side of the law. I often think that if he hadn't arrested me, I wouldn't have ended up in this position that I'm in right now, being able to speak to everybody here. Or I would have ended up in two places, either in prison or 6 feet in a graveyard.
Transforming a judicial system from one in which the dominant paradigm is the determination of right and wrong into one in which the dominant paradigm is arriving at the best solution for each individual situation may appear to be an extraordinarily difficult task. But when I think about the difficulties surmounted by the people you've heard from today, I'm confident that we can do so. I'm not foolish enough to think that even the best courts and the best services can solve every mental health or substance abuse problem, or prevent all crime, or find homes for everyone. But I believe we can do better, much better, if those who work for and with the state of New York work collaboratively towards that objective.